welcome to this edition of The Higher Estate. I'm sorry I've been away for a while, but let me just backtrack. What do we do here at The Higher Estate? Our goal is to bridge the medicine and lifestyle world in a world that we're coming together as a community through mindful consumption. We are entering a legalized world, people, and we're not prohibitionists. We work on harm reduction. And but let's flip that term. Remember, we had a guy on here, Andrew Hathaway, and he, the historian, and he said, "Well, why not call it focus on wellness?" As soon as you say the word harm reduction, you've already said there's something wrong. We agree that abusing things are wrong, but we do believe in living a positive lifestyle. So let's positively spin that. We call that wellness. So here on The Higher Estate, we focus on wellness. But in order to understand, where we want to go, we have to understand where we've been. We have to understand where we are right now. And we have an amazing guest on here today who's been around longer than I have, but he has way less gray hair. And
I got some in this beard. What are you talking about?
You actually, all my gray was red. I got two redhead kids, full-blown red, ginger,
they call them gingers.
We call them gingies. I don't know. They're as full-blown red as they get. Anyway, all my gray was red at one time. You still have a lot
I have a potpourri in my beard. I got everything from
good.
Ginger to black to white. And
it looks good. We could talk about hair too, but
we could talk about your new product, the beard
That's
oil.
right, beard oil if you want. Hey everybody!
By the way,
let's show that. Yeah, let's
look at
show
this.
that.
Let the camera see how it's
Baby Elephant, our new product line is out, hemp beard oil, and it's awesome.
That was not staged. That was awesome. Spontaneous.
So our amazing guest today, also a warrior for pain and a warrior for Canna Warrior, also works in pain clinics and level 2 stuff, interventional all over the place, also emerge, Dr. Matt Cooper. And we're going to be talking about, we're going to go into the opioid crisis. We're going to go into, how he treats pain, his method for pain, what got him into this stuff, and where he thinks it's going. And, I usually have a lot of questions that I raise, but finally, I think I'm in my wheelhouse of being able to, have a meaningful discussion without having so many questions, where normally I'm the guy that doesn't really know what everybody who's around me is talking about. I think today I may have an idea.
It's going to be spontaneous. Very easy.
Very spontaneous. In other news, I know we're not doing the news thing anymore, right? But just briefly, I apologize for not being around for a couple of weeks. Finally came back. Cannabis Retreat was a major success in Malibu. We had an amazing time, and you can check it out on the website because we Rolling Stone covered it, LA Weekly covered it, Emerald Magazine covered it. Culture something or other. Man, it was covered everywhere, but it was a blast. And
plus, you got to go to Malibu.
Plus, I got to go to Malibu and stay at this. Actually, a crazy story. Okay, before we start, I'm going to tell this crazy story. So, the difference between cannabis and alcohol. So imagine me as a physician. So just imagine me, period. So we're in an estate in Malibu. I guess I could tell the story. So we're in a estate in Malibu, and it's a gated off estate. When you go into somebody's estate and they have gates,
one house or multiple houses, a gated community?
Yeah, and it wasn't a community. It was a full retreat sort of.
Retreat, gotcha.
It's just imagine like El Chapo's estate in Mexico.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But not that big.
Right.
So we're at this sort of retreat, some guy's estate that he rents it out now. There's 3
So it was
houses.
rented out for cannabis.
Yeah, it was rented out for cannabis, and he's trying to build it into this estate center. Anyway, it wasn't great, but the estate was beautiful. Mm-hmm. It's just everything else. Anyway, doesn't matter. So story being, one night, it was just after the last event took place. So we hold different programs throughout the day, and it was the last one had just taken place. Actually, I think I was doing I left that day. I had just come back. I was lecturing at the Palm Springs Film Festival. And cool. It was really cool. They did this Cannabis Symposium there, and I keynoted it. It was really cool, man. People were totally down. They loved it. I met guys that You know the study done by the Journal of Gastroenterology 2014 or 15 on Crohn's for THC with Crohn's. Right. So I'm finished the study. This guy stands up and says, I was part of the trial. I'm like, only in California does that happen.
That's right.
This doctor gets up and he's like, yeah, my clinics were part of this trial. And I'm like, amazing. Like, only in this place does it happen. Anyway, back to the story. So I come back and all of a sudden they had done flower crown making. That was like one of these nights. You saw the photo that I posted on my Instagram, right? So they finally did this. So they did this flower, a crown making thing. And I saw a flower crown that was on the table and I took it. I'm wearing a flower crown. And of course, I told everybody I made it, but I didn't. And but it's this really crazy thing. I got to show you the photo. Anyway, all of a sudden, I'm just sitting talking. No, I was going to get some clothing. I was in the trunk of a car. All of a sudden, we hear this screech in
car.
Well, I wasn't sitting in the trunk of a car. I think I was getting something out of the trunk of a car. I was moving something. All of a sudden, there's this loud, massive screech, and bang, and like literally out of a movie, like what you hear when it goes. You know what I mean? So this whole thing happens, and people start running for the gate because it sounds like it just came from outside the gate.
Right.
So all I hear is
people are running to the commotion.
Running to the commotion.
Away from
People are running towards the commotion. Like, we're in the hills of Malibu. It's really, they're called the Santa Monica Mountains or Valley, whatever. But it
the Sierra Nevada is coming down.
Yeah, it falls into that Malibu area. Or anyway, so we're up in the mountains. So like the only way through, people drive nuts up there. Like that's like, it was just insane.
And the roads are good.
And this is like, we're in the mountains. They're winding everywhere. So all I hear is one guy who, the owner of Medicine Box, which is like our equivalent of licensed producers. They have like growers, right? It's very community based there. So this guy Brian, all I hear is him yelling, "Are you okay? Are you okay, ma'am? Are you?" Anyway, but like from across the street, he happened to just be standing right near where this incident happened. We open the gate. I'm running out to see this woman who smashed, like literally turned the corner, smashed her car, like just totally
totaled the Ferrari.
Fucking ramshack, like gone. Okay. Anyway, totally blew this car up. And airbags everywhere, and she's sitting in the front of the car still. And I run over, I'm wearing a crown. I'm wearing this, you see a whole bunch of hippies. You see a whole bunch of hippies running out of, you can picture this, a whole bunch, looks like a cult. Everybody wearing like these flower crowns. Brian turns and goes, "We have a doctor." And I'm like, wearing this flower crown. No, it's true. I can't practice in the state of California, but you were just in an accident. So she's like, she turns to me, just like totally dazed, like not even answering. I'm like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Don't worry. I mean, it's true. We may look like we're a cult, but we're not. We're just having it's just an awesome community." And everybody's like trying to like pet her and like, "Are you okay?" In the meantime, she gets out of the car. She's had a really bad night. She says, she had just broken up with her partner. She was a lawyer, I guess. And she's hammered. Like just out of her wig. Like that's like she got behind her wheel of a car totally drunk. And perhaps, I don't know, I don't want to get allegedly maybe she wasn't behind the wheel of her car. I don't know where she was. Allegedly she was really drunk.
Got to preface that as she's a lawyer.
Right. So I don't know. We're in a different country now. Can I get sued? I can't get sued for me. Yeah. Hey, what happened over here? I don't know. I wasn't there. It was some other guy in a flower crown. So this woman gets out, and I'm trying to "Are you okay?" I'm trying to be like, "Don't move." Feel her neck. She's like going to the back. She's worried about her purse. So she was worried about where her car is like totaled. She was in I think she was a BMW or Mercedes. I can't remember. Really nice. Anyway, she was worried about about where her purse was. And we're like, why don't you come with us? And we're like, come with us. You have like 10 people.
We will put a crown on you.
Yeah, we have 10 people with like these flower crowns. We walk her into this little compound, and I guess somebody had called the police, right? Because it was a big crash.
Yeah.
Turn around, she's doing push-ups. She's trying to burn the alcohol. Right. This is what alcohol does to you. Anyway, the point of the story is you have a bunch of cannabis people that are like just a bunch of community members trying to pet this poor woman, and me comes out as a doctor wearing this flower crown, which is posted on Instagram, and she's turning around doing push-ups. So we open the door, even though cannabis is legal, of course, now in California. Basically, so we had two options. Either you invite the police in onto the property, or she has to go out. So we narrowly open the door. Police is looking with this little flashlight. Basically, she walks outside, door closes right behind her. What's happening here? I have no idea. Anyway, the whole experience was surreal. I don't know. I thought that was a funny story. Just picture
the
me
moral
wearing...
of the story,
don't drink.
Choose your substance wisely.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Great story.
Thank you. I guess I'm talking too close. I always talk too close to this thing.
You're excited.
All right, I was excited. Woo, it was catching up. We haven't been casting in quite some time. I don't have my white doctor coat because we have another
scrubs.
doctor
you got
here.
Scrubs.
So,
Green scrubs.
Who's trusted more? So
after that story.
It's a good story. All right, Matt.
Yes.
Dr. Cooper.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
We finally met.
Yeah, that's a good story.
That's a good story.
We could probably make it a bit more brief.
Yeah, I'm really...
Let me tell the story.
Yeah, tell the story.
Okay, so I've been working in Hamilton for over 5 years in a pain clinic, and I've been doing Emerge for 20 years. I'll just give a preface of who I am.
Tell us who you are.
Yeah, Canadian-trained physician, did family medicine with a special interest in rural medicine. I worked up in the Arctic on some...
Look damn good for practicing for 20 years.
Jesus.
Yeah.
98. I graduated. So
really?
It's been a while.
Wow.
And then... And I practice in small town, mountain towns in British Columbia, mostly to ski and mountain bike. But anyway, then I was up in the Arctic, met a bunch of Australian nurses, and they said, why don't you come to Australia? And I'm like, I want to surf. So I moved to Australia for 4 years, practiced there for a bit, and then repatriated myself back to Ontario and started working Emerge and did that for, what years? 12 years.
1897?
Yeah.
You've been doing that for a while.
I'm a bit creaky in my bones.
Cannabis is keeping you young.
It is very youthful. Anyway, back there. Anyway, I had been working in Hamilton now for just over 5 years in a pain clinic, and actually referring a lot of people to Ira for cannabis. And so his name was not foreign to me, and I'm sure you would recognize my name from
I've seen your name all
a lot.
the time.
So anyway, but never physically met him, but also heard a ton of stories, and everyone sort of talk. It's a small community. We all know each other. And so we were at a mutual Emerge conference, again out in British Columbia,
basically
skiing. That's right, for the conference, for the educational material, of course, yeah. And we're in a pub just having a drink and introducing ourselves, and we cross names, and this sort of light bulb, that's right, you are? Anyway, it was a great meeting, and he's like, you gotta come and join me for this podcast. And of course, yeah. It's
First I tried to convince you to be our medical director for this level 2 pain thing. Which we'll
see. Yeah.
Get there eventually.
Yeah,
I hope so. And then you got your work is you've been doing this. You've been working in the pain world longer than I have. I started 2010. You've been doing interventional pain for longer than that, I assume, or no?
No, interventional has been, because the Minerva's basically just comprehensive pain. It's not a level 2.
Right,
so we do some minor procedures. Right. But the interventional stuff I've been doing for almost 3 years.
Okay, all right.
In Burlington with Mike Boucher.
Yeah, I like him.
He's nice fellow, super guy, legend. And then I've, as a result of that, I sort of got into I live in Toronto, so I got involved in the cannabis community there, and then started at White Cedar, which is a cannabis clinic in sort of Summerhill area of Toronto.
Yeah, sure. So is that a Grow-wise? Who owns?
It's a complicated. So basically,
the whole industry is complicated.
It is. So this is it's a neat sort of story. So I was approached a number of years ago by a bunch of different clinics and people in the cannabis industry, and these guys were very professional and organized, and they wanted someone with a pain background, and I happened to live close by, and they presented their case in a sort of very reasonable fashion, and I thought, let's give this a go, and really enjoyed the experience. So basically, the clinic, it's under the umbrella of one of the licensed producers.
Okay.
And now called Emblem. It was called something else
owned
before.
by Emblem, right.
Emblem. So Emblem are a licensed producer. They're also
Can we talk about that?
We can talk about anything you want. Yeah. So licensed producer, they are they have an education arm called GrowWise, which goes out to many smaller communities that can't sort of support an independent clinic, and they provide that to
That's where
practices.
Neil and Crispin.
They work at a White Cedar branch, exactly.
I thought it was just all called GrowWise.
No, so GrowWise is just the education arm, and White Cedar is the clinics. So individual standalone clinics are White Cedar. But the they try to be, the educational arm tries to be impartial to whoever, whatever the patient wants. And I'm obviously, long arm's length from any decision. So
we have to be.
That's right. Yeah. So that's my background, and I do that on Fridays. It's always my favorite day of the week. I tell people, and it legitimately is my favorite day of the week.
So coming from, we could talk. Well, I want to talk about Emblem. I'll come back to Emblem later on, because Purdue and Emblem. There's a connection there.
There is, and we can talk about that for sure.
But you came from a pain background.
Correct.
You come from, you came from working in pain clinics first to finding your way into cannabis.
Correct.
What brought you into the cannabis world? What do you think it was that, as a physician, because most aren't educated in cannabis?
A lot are not, and we'll talk about that. I've given some lectures, so you can. I'm sure you have too. And when you're lecturing to people, on the front lines, i.e., family doctors, it's amazing the uncertainty, lack of knowledge, and some are really keen to learn and start prescribing, but a lot of people want to still distance themselves. So that's a whole nother issue we can talk about.
What brought you to it?
What brought me to it? I think it was your good work. I saw. No, I mean, legitimately, I think there's a component of that. I think that I see the follow-up of my own pain patients, because I would just periodically prescribe from Minerva and refer out most of the stuff.
Right.
And that's right.
2014, 15.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And getting the feedback and seeing the positive results, and not just in pain. So when we think about pain, that's complex. It has, people have mood issues, they have sleep issues. They have work issues, they have function issues, they have self-esteem issues, the list goes on. And when you start to see one product that is primarily initiated for, let's say, neuropathic pain, suddenly reconnecting with a spouse, suddenly being able to work more or start functioning more, these are the lifestyle issues that are more subjective, but probably more important in my perspective. So seeing what good happened as a result of this was really an eye-opener for me, and I thought, quite legitimately, I want to get involved in this arena for sure.
So it's interesting, because I totally agree that pain, when we treat pain, I mean, how do I even put this? When we're treating pain, we really are trying to treat. I mean, there's so many different aspects to a person's psyche, to the whole person.
For sure.
Pain is like one tiny part of it.
Right.
It might be that the pain is causing all these other things.
That's right. And quite often there's some trauma, there's some work injury, car accident, whatever that sort of precipitates the whole cascade of events. And as they have the pain longer, eventually it starts to affect their way of thinking and their identity, their mood. All of those things become affected. So it's nice to have, not for everybody, but for the majority of people, something that helps on a multifaceted sort of level.
It will help your pain, but at the same time, you're going to get the sequelae of results from all these other areas. Whenever I look at studies, I look at, did they reach statistical significance on the primary outcome? Right. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. But where they always hit statistical significance when it comes to cannabis studies is quality of life,
correct,
improvement of sleep,
right,
and functioning and overall functioning. So yeah, maybe we didn't hit the statistical significance on let's say you're in remission from Crohn's. I'll use the Crohn's study because they didn't hit remission. They did go pain-free 8 weeks without steroids.
Yep.
But yeah, we didn't hit remission. Okay, but was that the outcome? Like, sure, that might be.
And sometimes in the studies, those outcomes aren't even mentioned. Right? So you can have objective markers, but if you're not actually looking at the quality of life changes that a person has, then you're missing a whole component of that individual, right?
Do you think that it's I would say mainstream medicine, or no, not mainstream, because I think cannabis is finally, after like a decade of working in the medical world, that I think most physicians at least accept it because of or at least will refer out or think about cannabis. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm also living in my own little bubble now, where I know that I stood out there waving banners on my own, and now believe that it's fully out there. But I mean,
you have a total bias because that's your niche, right? And so somebody who's a family doctor and has all of these other things that they're treating, this is only a very tiny component of that, and maybe they don't even have any exposure because they don't have any of their patients, and that's how it starts. And I see this in my cannabis clinic. I see this, I'll treat one person and have some really positive results, and a few weeks later I'm seeing the nephew, or I'm seeing a family member, or I'm seeing a work colleague or something because of the results. So I think as that snowball effect is legitimately happening. You probably noticed that in your clinic too. You
just sort of whole families that start to come out, and then you have even their physicians who like, wow, I saw this here and it was really working.
Send this person to them at my work. And
unfortunately, it doesn't work for everybody. No. I mean, I think we all agree that I use a 5-person rule. Works great for 2, works okay for 1, does nothing for 2 others. Right? That's sort of like the 5-person rule. And
I like that. Because something that people can relate to.
Right. And,
the numbers
and then
I throw out.
We see physicians that come out and say, oh well, look at the side effects. You're going to get cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is cyclical vomiting.
Where do you see that more? In Emerge. And those are from high THC recreational users. They're not from your CBD.
I published the largest retrospective chart review on it.
Really?
And what's that? No, you could get it from, so it's funny. It does exist. Actually, I went into the study. It was done, I supervised the study for 2 of my residents. We published it 2000, it was in CGEM, 2017. Jeremy Hernandez was my resident on it. I give them credit because they did most of the work. I like supervising projects. Like, sure, call me when it's done. Great work. Let's send it out to this guy. Let's see if they can review it. So, it's interesting because you're right. So it's usually high THC recreational users.
Absolutely.
I've actually seen it once. I've treated thousands of patients. I have seen it once in my medical population.
Okay.
Once.
Right. What was the indication for that individual?
She had something wrong with her liver, her kidneys. I think she had kidney failure, and she required cannabis for some sort of pain. I can't remember.
So perhaps the concentration was greater because she wasn't filtering it as much, something like that. It could
be, but most cannabis is mostly fecally excreted. So
right.
Your kidneys are pretty. I actually called a nephrologist
to ask.
I called Nephro on call at MAC to see, to go through the whole process. I went through how's cannabis metabolized.
Right.
It is P450.
Yes. So there's some liver.
There is some liver component, certainly, and both THC and CBD are metabolized by your liver. But I didn't have a good answer. So what I did was I just took her off of THC and just put her on just purely CBD, and it resolved.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, while I'm looking at death from her opioid, or I'm looking at
that's right. And this is the term you used, harm reduction.
Right.
And I think that I initiate cannabis for harm reduction not infrequently, because if you have 2 scenarios and one which is a safer alternative, why would you not choose that?
Right.
And it's not for everybody, but for a vast majority of people. And I've had such success in reducing opioid burden or eliminating it in some patients too, with the aid of cannabis. So I'm a huge advocate from that perspective.
So you come from a traditional, like you work in a traditional pain clinic, right?
Yes. Yep.
Both Minerva and Burlington.
Correct.
And so you prescribe opioids, and I'm not against the use of opioids for certain disease processes, especially in an acute type of pain.
Acute, absolutely. I think that the value for chronic non-cancer pain is certainly less, and we have learned a lot of lessons over the years.
Like what?
Well, I think that there is, potential for addiction that's clear,
Right.
and there's also dose escalation. People after 6 to 8 weeks tend to become, I suppose I shouldn't use medical terms, but become tolerant of that particular dose, and in order to get the same effect, you have to escalate the dose. And you can do this indefinitely for some patients, and that's when you get these whopping, doses of opioids.
Right.
And it's hard to go the other way. It's hard to reduce somebody else's dose.
Right.
So, without that, it's we always say in medicine that, vision is 20/20 with the retrospectoscope, right?
Yeah.
So looking backwards is easy, but you don't know you're creating a problem when you're going through it. So I think legitimately, the guys that were in pain way before me had very good intention. I think that there was, everybody wants to help somebody. And, you keep doing what you think is right at the time, and all literature and everything supported that. But I think that as we go through this process, we recognize that it doesn't necessarily translate to better pain control if we're using opioid as an example.
Right. So if we look at the evidence, the evidence would suggest that usually opioids in chronic pain, it's not going to offer too much benefit. Acute pain, it does well. I don't know if there's very much evidence. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a lot of evidence for the use of opioids.
I think in very select cases, and as a third-line agent, which basically, for all you non-medical folk, means that you've tried a couple of other agents
Exercise, physio, that all. If you look at the National Pain Guideline, opioids are
well,
not
I always
first
think
line
that
anymore.
whatever your pain agent, and we're sort of changing our focus into pain, but I always tell my pain patients that whatever medicine or interventional option that we choose, interventional means doing stuff like putting needles in people for headaches or back pain, whatever we do to try and help someone, it is only a way to facilitate greater activity. And it's the medicine, the treatment is actually the activity. So if you present it in that fashion and say,
that.
Have you taken your medicine, i.e. have you done your exercise today? I think that benefits people. For instance, a very common condition is fibromyalgia.
Right.
And the only strong evidence for therapy for fibromyalgia that is evidence-backed is activity.
Exercise.
Exercise.
Yeah.
The more exercise you do, surprise, surprise. And I have seen this time and time again with my patients. So if you present it in this fashion, say if we do these injections, if we start this CBD oil, if we give you Tylenol or gabapentin, the objective is that you don't just sit on the couch longer. The objective is you start walking, you do aquafit, you start doing stationary bicycle, whatever it is that gets you excited, and do it. And do
Functional
it a lot.
outcomes are the key.
Absolutely.
So, and by functional, sorry, I'll give my functional being like more activity or
correct,
like positive.
Yeah, and also occupational and also recreational stuff. These people have lost a lot in the pain sphere.
Yeah.
They've stopped doing things with their friends and family, and it starts to have a knock-on effect on their ability to interact. And some of these people feel like a lot of their happiness and joy in life has been taken from them. So if we can provide a substance, let's move it right back to the good stuff, back to the cannabis. Yeah. If we can use that as an agent to facilitate exercise and activity, fantastic.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So why do you think there's so much? Do you think the hesitation on the part of both, just the general public and of the physician in general, or the medical society, do you think that the fear is we're going to recreate another problem like we have with opioids?
I think there's certainly a question of the unknown because, we haven't been using it for many years and there's not in a medical, like in a
mainstream medical. We've been using it for thousands of years.
Of course we have. I'm talking purely for symptom control.
Right.
Guided by physicians. I think that we just don't have the data on it. And a lot of physicians are very skeptical or uncertain to use something where there isn't data to support it. But this is a unique scenario because there's no data because we haven't been able to do studies.
Well, there's no data for opioids that except for long-term side effects.
There's certainly some side effects.
How is it that we're okay with using something like an opioid where our long-term data shows no real improvement and potential lots of danger, but this seems to be something different. Like, what are they thinking? What is the physician thinking? I'm biased, so I'm trying to not come to that. Yeah, I feel like you have more of an objective view doing both. So tell me. I mean, I want to know where, how is it that the CMA comes out and says we don't have a good argument when I can show you the research I'm doing right now will show an 88% of our patients are not even our patients, and of pain patients that are included in this study have reduced their opioid use, and nearly 70% are off of them 100%.
What's the power of that study? How many people are involved in that? Because that is wonderful data. I mean, I would love to give some patients to that study. If you get, I've got a lot.
Well, ask Sunil. He's my damn partner. I
will enroll a ton because I've had some very positive results.
This is it's a prospective cohort, so this is just the phase 1, phase 2 starting probably in the next little bit. We have currently we've approached about 800. We've enrolled almost probably now somewhere for 500-600.
Then it must be through Minerva. It must be some.
So there are some we just started in Minerva. Okay. We're now multi-center. We're using GrowWise as part of it too. And we just got finally. It's hard because the industry, of course, the only people that sponsor this kind of research is industry stuff right now.
Sure. It takes a lot of time, effort, and quite frankly, money to perform these studies. And I think that's the problem, is that we haven't had the capacity to do these studies because the finance has not really been there. Because there's no business side to the argument.
I think this will be a landmark finding.
I hope so.
It is only a questionnaire currently in a prospective cohort, but we're moving it into phase 2, which is an RCT.
It's hard to do a double blind on this, isn't it?
Well, we are for our RCT.
Are you?
Yeah. This is and we just.
What is the blinded arm? It's just are you doing oils then?
We have 4 arms. It's I can't talk about the study just yet.
Okay. That's what I want to know.
Ruin it. Yeah, no. The phase 2 is just about to start. Any time now. We're just applying to REB for ethics approval.
Wonderful. Good for you. Good for you spearheading this.
It's but here's my.
Well, I think this. I mean, sorry to interject, but I think that when we get these sort of results, it will hopefully allow a lot of hesitancy in the physician community to start, prescribing with more confidence, right? So when we start getting, reasonable data that comes our way, which eventually it is going to come. I know there's some studies out of Israel that certainly support the use, but I think when we have more local data, I think physicians are going to welcome this.
I hope they do. I mean, the problem that I've run into every problem
obstacles
that there is.
I bet all the way with your sort of early start to this. There's a lot of roadblocks, I'm sure.
But when I look at, the way that I came to it is I looked at do no harm, then do everything else you possibly can.
Right.
So I have decades, 40 years, 50 years of harm studies showing a lack of harm of cannabis.
Yep.
So, and I have decades of harm studies showing a positive harm effect of a side effect profile of other things like opioids. I don't understand how there's still an argument. Where is the argument? I mean, the argument is we don't have enough data on long-term effects. We have 3,500 years of long-term effects from 43% of a population in our 43% of our world who uses cannabis. And that was United Nations.
Say that again. 43%.
43% of every population in the world. United Nations in 2009 came out with a statement that for about 43%.
So in a person's lifetime. So 43%
of the world has used THC to get high.
At least once in their lifetime. Right. Not chronic.
We're at about 14% for that.
That's good to know.
You have like a massive population of people that use it, and I don't have bodies building up.
If you were to use the same statistics, say for another substance, alcohol, think of the harm there. Think of the death there. Think of the abuse and all the things that happen as a result of that.
It's insane.
It's crazy that we brand one, in such negative light, and another one which is actually considerably more dangerous to our society and our lives and our families. And we advertise it all over the place. Big smiles.
So what are your and somehow it's okay to do that,
acceptable,
but that doesn't
socially necessary almost.
It doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't.
I'm dealing with because I run that a retreat for mindful consumption, that the cannabis retreats where they get educated through this thing.
That was yours.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Cannabis retreats is my
baby.
That's well, I have a partner in California. That's
Okay.
where we do it. We're looking at running the next one of them. The next one will probably be in Humboldt, which is where, like, California, which is where the origins of cannabis from the 70s. It's pretty far out there. It's like 5 hours north of San Francisco, so we'll have shuttles and stuff. But in late September, maybe early October, we're thinking about doing it here. And, everywhere we look, they're like, well, we have designated places for alcohol. We have designated, you can use alcohol over here, over there. And I'm like, we're alcohol free. Because we're like, well, which day can we throw a party on? We have a 6-day retreat and one day's a party. We're like, can we throw a party? They're like, well, we have alcohol, I'm like, no. Our parties don't have alcohol. No. There's no alcohol here. It's all about mindfulness here.
Sure.
And they just didn't understand. They just don't get it. So let me ask you then a question.
Sure.
Having prescribed opioids, truth is, I started in Minerva before it was called Minerva 2. I was there
with Kimbar?
I was there with
the Blue
Kimbar.
House.
Yeah, I was in the Blue House with, so that's where I got my start in 2010. I was doing cannabis before that already in Toronto, but I was, wasn't like maybe a few months before that, but where I started working in pain was there. I mean, if I even told you the cannabis discrimination that happened to me, even there was pretty. Yeah, I was asked,
a neat label, cannabis discrimination.
Yeah, that's what I call it. Yeah, I was asked to leave.
Coined that.
Yeah, I was asked to leave from the location. Right. I don't mind talking about it. Because it showed up in the news. But at the time, cannabis wasn't a thing yet. But in the meantime, you prescribe.
You were on the vanguard. I just want to say the word vanguard. You were like right out there.
But it's still scary for me because I still deal, like, even though now the world is open to cannabis as a medicine. That's how I look at it, as a medicine. We're talking about medicine. I'm still fine tooth comb no matter where I go. So I mean, I have my own PTSD from opening those gates. Like, I'm still dealing with it. But anyways, should do some cannabis.
See, I suppose fortunately I haven't had, like, because I was a later entrant than you, I haven't had those obstacles, and it's been, well, society, I think, generally has accepted. 100%. Even though some of the medical community has not, but even in the 2.5 years since I've been prescribing,
I don't buy that anymore.
The resistance was so much initially,
That's right.
It really has. Even every few months that goes by, it becomes more accepting. I get referrals from all sorts of Princess Margaret, gastroenterologists, all sorts
neurologists,
of all sorts of disciplines,
pediatricians. Yeah. So I actually think the roadblock, the obstacle isn't really. I mean, you have ivory tower people like in the CMA that are saying, "Oh, this isn't." But again, they're allowed their opinion. We don't necessarily even have to follow their opinion. As long as we can, what I've realized, they have a role. Yeah. They have a role of public safety, the same way the college has a role, and they all have roles. Yeah. As long as we can justify and back up our perspective, good decision making. They're not against it. No, they don't say no. You absolutely can't. Like, I fought and pled my case. I still practice, right? But I fought and pled my case, and it was accepted. Right. If you're going to fight your case, or if you're going to, if you're doing things that are totally offside when it comes to, practicing, cannabinoid medicine or whatever you want to call it, then sure. If you're just handing out scripts willy-nilly, but if you do that for anything,
it does make you concerned if, people are telling you stories. I don't know the legitimacy of it, but sort of like a rubber stamping sort of thing.
I know it. It's real.
I think that it's important to have, because, we're under the microscope, to have, as much professionalism, and much like, I always remind the patients that this is going to be no different than seeing your endocrinologist or your surgeon. Like, your doctor's going to get a consult letter back, explaining why we're doing this, how we're doing this. And I think that sort of, once you have that legitimacy, it certainly translates to further referrals and more acceptance of this as an acceptable route of therapy.
Yeah. And I've seen the physician resistance and obstacles go far down. Like I was saying, just maybe the guys at the top, but they're just they're also not fully educated, right? And they're looking at general terms. They're not clinicians day to day.
Right.
They're not like us sitting in the clinic every day seeing the actual results.
Oh, you mean the guys making the guidelines? Or
Yeah. I don't even buy into the guidelines, and I don't think we necessarily have to. We're still people. We still have the right to make our own decisions.
Yep.
And we follow, of course, I follow general principles and we follow general rules. But if we have evidence, I think it's our duty to follow the evidence.
Agreed. Or in your case, make the evidence.
Right, or make the evidence. Yeah,
right.
we have to.
Create that. That's wonderful.
That's our duty. And I like saying duty. So I'm not swearing. It says, hey, that's our shit. Yeah, I just wanted to put that in there.
Check it in.
Yeah, I put in 10 cents for that one. But yeah, so let's go back to that, my question, to my initial thought. You work both in a pain clinic and you prescribe cannabinoids.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on prescribing opioids? And I know where we all stand, at least on the idea of cannabinoids, but I think we also need to demystify a little bit. We are in the middle of a crisis of opioids. I don't prescribe opioids, period, for chronic pain, but there might be some situations where it's needed. So let's demystify.
There's a spectrum of prescribing for opioids. There's some physicians that have been prescribing for years and prescribe large amounts with good results and have happy, well-adjusted patients. And there's patients that don't do well on it. It's important to identify those that do and that don't. I was a more recent entrant into the chronic pain game, and so I've had sort of a little bit more current data that makes us a lot more hesitant to prescribe in very specific scenarios. So my sort of number of patients that are on opioids is actually relatively small.
Oh, okay, good.
I use a lot of atypical agents and try and do sort of lifestyle modification and do a lot lot of the interventional
When you
pain.
say, I'm just going to interrupt you, when you say atypical, you're talking about like
gabapentinoids, tricyclics, those sorts of agents. And cannabinoids.
Let's just go, right. So I put cannabinoids in that same category. And the reason why I do that is, when we talk about atypicals or things that aren't usually used for the specific purpose, we're talking about off-label use.
Correct.
And most of the drugs we use in chronic pain are off-label.
Sure.
Except for opioids, which for some reason are still on label, but I don't even think they are for acute pain.
So I actually, and I think
gabapentin is an anti-epileptic.
Correct. Yeah, and amitriptyline, nortriptyline are actually antidepressant, but we use them at a 10th or a 15th the dose and have reasonably good results in treating people's neuropathic or nerve pain. So we are using off-label indications, but it's very acceptable, and these medications have been used for many, many years in this capacity. So it's not something cavalier that we're doing. They're legitimate.
It's interesting. I looked at the evidence around using Neurontin, gabapentin, for chronic pain. I listened to the pharmaceutical company through to the old I think it was a CEO, COO. I can't remember the whole story. Basically, their idea, because it's still, its use is in one very specific condition. We use it for everything. Even in neuropathic pain, the use of gabapentin has, a lot of side effects. Coming off of gabapentin, by the way, is horrible.
It is not easy.
And his goal was, he was talking to his drug reps saying, gabapentin for everything. You go tell your doctors gabapentin for this, gabapentin for that, gabapentin for that, Neurontin for this, Neurontin for that. How does that become acceptable? How is it acceptable to say Neurontin is okay to use even though we know it's going to cause X? And then we have medical, we have authorities that say it's totally fine, but then we have something like cannabis. Like you even just said, we've used it for years, so it's accepted. So we've used cannabis for years. Why isn't it accepted? Right. Is it because it's a social stigma as well?
I think absolutely. And that, again, is being diminished as time goes on. That stigma is going down very rapidly. But certainly...
That was my interruption, sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. And certainly if we look at... there's two sides of giving a person a medication, not just the efficacy or the effect of it, but the side effect of it too, right? So we look at certain medication classes for pain control. A lot of times, like I would say, and I don't want the company to come after me, but pregabalin or Lyrica about 50% of the time, in my experience as a clinician, it's intolerable. Right? So, why am I going to give somebody a medication that half the time they come back to me and say, what have you done? It just ruined last week for me. Right? So, whereas I tend not to get that, and you can certainly back me on this, the amount of side effects when you're appropriately using cannabis and prescribing it and dose escalating is very small.
Yeah.
Like the number of people that come back and say, this stuff is terrible. It's, made my life miserable. It's still, it's so small.
They'll come back and they'll say it just didn't work.
That's right. That's right. And you go, okay.
Doc, I don't understand. I've started taking more and more. It's just doing nothing. Yeah. Okay, well, that's better than the side effect perhaps that you're going to get. So what kind of classes of medications do you use and why? I think it's important that we understand that cannabis isn't just the be all and end all. There are people that don't respond to it.
That's right. It's we're not peddling snake oil, right? It's important to know that there's 1 out of 5 people, I find this sort of goes along with your statistic, there's just no effect. But that also means 4 out of 5 people actually have some improvement in their pain or their quality of life or their spasticity or their insomnia or whatever indication you're using it for.
Yeah. So the 4 days that you don't practice in
cannabis,
cannabis, you're prescribing and injecting. So let's talk about the efficacy, and it works, because I think there are people that do require those things, So
and also, we're not using one drug or one strategy in isolation. When we're talking about pain, and the reason we keep going back to pain is because of my background and your opportunity to talk to me.
75% of what we use cannabis for here is
So we don't have monotherapy in mind. We often have, and if we think of going back to activity as being a therapeutic option, there are a whole host of different things that you can do for one individual, and it's finding the best sort of regimen or a combination of treatments that work for that individual person. And often it's a trial and error. You have to do a number of things before you get to the point where you say the patient says to you, I think we've got it. I think we've got the right dose, the right frequency, the right combination of different products to make me better and make my life more enjoyable and less pain, more pain-free, effectively. So sometimes that involves, the judicious use of cannabis. Sometimes that involves more traditional medications, and sometimes that involves interventional-based therapy, and sometimes it involves all of it. So it's so specific to the individual that you can't sort of have a blanket do ABC. Otherwise, if that was the case, a computer could really do our job, right?
Right.
It's just,
so what would you say
algorithm, off you go.
What would you say to the pain patient that just doesn't know what to do? Like they're in pain, they've tried pain clinics.
It depends where along that sort of treatment line they are. So I get referrals sometimes directly from the Emerge, and those patients are typically not, well worked up or well treated because they often but you're not
from the Emerge.
I'm an Emerge guy too.
Yeah, that's right? I know. You're right. We don't have time. We don't have time.
It's not our objective either, right? This is just a fast track into a service that could help an individual. And then you get referrals, say, from family physicians who have really jumped through all the hoops. They've spent a great deal of time. They've been very thorough and comprehensive at treating this individual. And there's actually a lot less things I can do for them, right? But we still try. We still try and dose optimize existing medications or add new ones. And a lot of times, it's less common that I would have a patient that's already been tried on cannabis. Typically, they've been tried on a number of things, and they're seeing me because those things haven't worked.
Right.
The success stories I'm never seeing. It's always the people that are more difficult.
That's right.
So,
I get those, and I get your patients, and everybody's patients who's failed everything.
That's exactly.
And then they come this way, and I'm like, oh,
you're the specialist of the specialist,
and then they come here and yell at me. So why isn't it working?
Yeah.
I don't know. We've tried everything. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Yeah. So it does. If you like a challenge, then this sort of field of medicine, not just throwing a drug or choosing a drug, you also have to be thinking about all the other aspects of their lives and trying to, advocate for that person and get them involved and motivate. I always tell my friends I'm a part-time motivational speaker in my job. In my job, because I have to motivate people to do things they don't necessarily want to do.
Yeah.
Go for walks when it's cold, Nobody wants to do that.
I think the number one reason, one of the main reasons I came into cannabis was because there aren't many areas of medicine that that have been dictated basically by patients, right? And are an example of a pure democracy at work. Because it was we the people that decided to make the change. It wasn't a government. They definitely didn't want to have it. It wasn't medicine that wanted to have it. It was the people that said, I had enough. We need to change, and the government was forced to change. Right. So, which is what brought me to
the sort of history of it.
Right. And and from my perspective, so that's the people. But from my perspective, then, for medicine, what I'm trying to do and what you're trying to do, and it sounds like we need to do more of, is that knowledge transference. We need to empower patients to make the right decisions, and that comes to having to do a lot of motivational speaking.
For sure, absolutely. And actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking of another really interesting thing with work as a physician in the realm of cannabis. When you think of most areas of medicine, they're typically based on a region of your body or a particular job you have, like a surgeon or a cardiologist. When you think of being a cannabis physician, you're actually a physician that deals with one product and the many different iterations of that, right? So it's a completely different paradigm, right? Yeah. It's a completely different way of looking at medicine. You're using a product for many different conditions versus being a specialist in a condition and using many different products. It's almost the opposite.
It's interesting. So, maybe that's I never thought of it like that. Maybe that's one of the hesitations. It's a paradigm shift.
It is.
We're using Western medicine it's an Eastern medicine perspective, but with Western medicine.
Right. Think of when you went to med school and you went through your rotations. You went through cardiopulmonary, whatever. And this breaks all those rules.
Breaks them all.
So, you have to be kind of open-minded to go into that, right? And so I found this, as I started to stick my toe into this and I started learning, I was like, wow, it's not like prescribing, any traditional medication where really you have the same medication just at different doses. It's a myriad of a ton of different things, and then you can get as detail focused as you want on that product. We want to look at terpenes, and the effect that has, or the route that you put it into your body. How many medications have 5 different ways of putting it into your body?
Crazy.
It's amazing. It keeps you excited, it keeps you passionate because there's so many combinations you can do. So I'm as you can tell, I have a lot of conviction. The passion is there.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
I love it.
And you have that too.
Yeah.
So we're sort of kindred spirits here, and I've seen the good, and I continue to, and that's why I said earlier in this talk, Friday's my favorite day of the week because I get to do this.
And you get to see people improve.
Oh yeah. My favorite visit, and you can probably vouch for me on this, is not the initial consult.
No.
It's the first follow-up.
100%.
And to see those people walk in and the things people have said to me, I wish I could write a book.
Right? We should write a book.
Well, and especially, not just the patient, it's the spouse or the children saying, I had one patient say, I knew my father was better when I could hear him singing in the shower. He hasn't sung in the shower for 15 years.
Wow.
Right? Or a wife saying, this guy's starting to talk to the neighbors, or he's walking to the mailbox again. These people haven't done these, what we see as very basic, sort of uninspiring sort of things. This is their life. This is a huge component of their life.
The human experience that it brings back to
and
their life.
People lose that over the years, and they don't even realize it's happening. They sort of just withdraw into their sort of shell of a house or their experience.
That's right.
To see those people start, interacting and living again, and, have younger people saying, I've actually started to get socially connected again.
Yeah.
And being a younger person, that's really important, is to have those connections and be social and make friends and stuff. And to not have that capacity, it's wonderful to be able to provide a substance that does that.
That doesn't do the opposite.
That doesn't do the opposite.
Because most of the medications we use
fatigue,
put you in,
mental clouding,
That's
that sort of stuff that happens with other products that we prescribe.
It's the opposite. It's a full paradigm shift.
Yep.
Matt, it was amazing amazing having you here today. We're already over an hour.
Oh my God,
Can
that
you
went
believe
by
that?
in a second.
It went by in a
We didn't
second.
talk about anything.
I know. We have so much.
We gotta do this again.
We'll do part 2. It's already been an hour. That's how quick this time flies.
Wow,
If you can believe it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
when you talk about something you're passionate about,
Yeah,
it goes
it just
by.
keeps
Yeah.
on going. I really wanted to thank you for being
cheers.
here. You're
Yeah,
wonderful.
thanks.
We didn't even get into like the opioid crisis. We just started the tip of the barrel here, and we've got we'll bring you on again. Maybe we'll do part 2 next 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, sure.
Let's
Whenever.
do it.
I'd be happy to come back.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. If you want to plug
And
anything, go
I
ahead.
got the beard oil.
You got the beard oil. Anything you want to talk about to, any clinics, any of your own stuff, lectures, anything, books that you're writing,
books I'm
lives you're
writing.
changing,
That's
ski
right.
trips you're taking.
Oh, there's lots of those. Yeah.
I went to Chatter Creek this year.
How was that?
It was outstanding.
Yeah.
I did go with.
Did you have some powder?
I did. It was pretty good. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, I had some, like, we had a little couple pow days that like maybe hit stuff.
There are a
It
few
was
things
insane.
in life that make me more happy.
There's
could
pillow
be.
runs, man. Like we were
It
like,
could be the best feeling.
It was the best feeling. I only lasted 2 of my 3 days because I had a torn hamstring, and I tore it like 3 weeks before I went, and I had like a bionic leg. It was so bad, but I still, like, how could you say no to something like that? We'll do a trip next year maybe. All right, guys, that's what we have today. Hey, check out the beard oil. We'll soon be selling all this stuff online. We have
That's your plug. I'm not making it.
Yeah, we have. That's my plug now. So we've Baby Elephant hemp beard oil. We have our chai tea. We're getting chaga in. We're gonna have our pain cream in soon as well. Check out Synergy Health Services.
Like cannabis infused?
It'll be cannabis infusible.
Infusible.
Yes.
Right. Of course.
So you take because you can't currently.
You cannot.
Right.
Yeah.
CBD we're working on. We have a CBD tea here from hemp, totally allowed. But I'm working on. I did fusion. You just put them together and off you go to the races. That's going to be a Baby Elephant as well. And in the meantime, check out synergyhealthservices.ca and Instagram, Synergy Health Services as well. And, our podcast and Cannabis Retreats. Anyway, we're just having a lot of fun. Check out whatever the fuck you want. Sorry. Done. I'll just throw it all in for that one.
It's been a blast.
Thanks, guys. That's been awesome. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.